Y'all, we live in difficult times. There's war, political unrest, the pandemic, poverty, families being torn, communities ripped by gun violence and people dying every day, police, injustice. It's all bringing so much pain. But y'all, we can look inside our minds and we can understand who we are, become better, and do this thing like we've never done it before. But it all starts with our mental health, and I know we can do it. I believe in you because I believe in me, and I believe in us. Hello, and thank you for joining in for another episode of Therapy is Life, where thinking, feeling, and experiencing well-being is what we do. But anyway, what's up, fellas?
What's happening?
Y'all feeling all right?
Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah. So Mark, you gonna get that workout in?
Man, listen, I'm telling you, as soon as we out this joint, I'm over to extreme, bro. I got to get my calories sliced up.
For real, that's what's up. What about you, Malji?
Hey man, the sun is shining. I did my yard work today, so I'm feeling all right right now, man. That was my cardio for the day. That was my workout for the day.
I said I'm John Deere.
Long laps.
Yeah, got that. What about you, Maury?
Man, after this, man, I'm gonna go home and try to relax a little bit, chill out for the night, and get ready for tomorrow.
Gotcha.
Going strong.
Gotcha. I'm gonna tell y'all guys, man, it's been a good day, but somewhere in the middle of the day, around 2:00, I got sick. It's funny, I had a client cancellation, and I was sitting there in my office, and I just laid my head back, and next thing you know, I wake up, and I'm like pouring down in sweat, like all over the place. I started to stand up. Oh my gosh, couldn't do it. Sit back down. Did it again. Sit back down. The third time, I was able to get up and go to the bathroom. I tell you, once I went to the bathroom, I felt so much better.
You got to remove yourself of them toxins, man.
Yeah,
Get fleshed out right quick, man.
Free yourself, brother.
That's a very good point, because toxins, you know how they do us. Toxins don't really mess with us immediately. They slowly take us out. Like air pollution, it slowly takes us out. We don't just get affected by air pollution in most cases on a day-to-day basis, but over time, it messes us up. And by the way, I know this is probably not on topic, but on topic, that one of the leading causes of high blood pressure is, guess what?
Wives. Off the top of the head so fast.
Wives.
What's the leading cause of high blood pressure?
One of the leading causes of high blood pressure. You won't believe it. And I think us folks, we need to know this, because we probably be sleeping on this toxin. But air pollution is one of the leading causes of high blood pressure.
Okay. What you can do about that?
That's crazy, right?
Yeah.
Sure.
I recently just started paying attention to the air quality when the weather.
Keep getting the notifications now. That's never been a thing before.
But I never really paid attention to it, man, until I started noticing the difference in my breathing sometimes when the air quality is low. So it's a real thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And so in the northeastern part of the United States, check this out. Because of the way the jet stream moves from west to east, a lot of the pollution moves from across the country, and it actually ends up on the East Coast in the northern part of the states. So I think I may be wrong on this. I can be fact checked because I know I'm not lying. But anyway, there is a disproportionate number of our people who have respiratory disease, asthma, and other conditions as a result of how the pollution moves across the United States and where it lands at. So if we don't think pollution is an important thing, it really is, man. Jeez, gosh.
Got me
So
about
toxic.
in the conspiracy bag. Chemtrails, they poisoning our air.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in it. There's a lot of stuff in it. You see those smokestacks? Yeah, it's a lot of stuff in it, man. So, but anyway, I know we didn't come here to talk about that. We want to talk about, masculinity. Last time we was talking about cowboys. cowboys. Okay, we was talking about gangsters. Yeah, Frank Lucas, right? We were talking about Shaft. Yeah, Richard Roundtree, the original one. You got to see that one. We were talking about, Flash and Batman and even Mr. Incredible and the Princes and the Knight in Shining Armor and all those things. Today, we want to focus more on home. We want to focus on schools, our communities, some of the things we learned in our communities about what it means to be a man. And before we get too off into that, y'all folks over there, I tell you, I want to render this idea for thought. So we talk about two lights, right? And there's the sun and there is the moon. When we think about the sun, we think about the moon, we realize there's only so many suns in the universe, right? But we see a whole lot of stars in the sky. But guess what, y'all? Most of our stars are only reflecting the light of a sun somewhere. So our universe, our sun is reflecting light on all these planets we see in the universe. Now, when I think about that, last week we was talking about stars, talking about heroes, all these different things, ideals. What do we call the people in Hollywood? What we all the time call them?
Yeah, stars.
Call them stars, right? We call them stars. And we oftentimes idolize them and idolize what they do, right? But in all essence, they are not lights. They are the reflection of light. The moon is only the reflection of light shining on it. It's not actual light. So I guess what I'm trying to say is ideals are wonderful because they point at something that might be true, but they're not the very essence of truth. And so that's when we have to really go to the source so we can understand what is and what's not. Ideals, they point at things that are true, the way we talk about being a man, the way we talk about relationships, the way we talk about politics, the way we talk about health and the way we live. Oftentimes we point at ideals and say we should be this way. But they only point at truth. But to really be truthful, we have to really look at the source and shine light on our experiences so we can actually live in healthy, constructive ways. Does that make sense, guys?
Yeah, I hear you. You went deep into it, but I hear you.
For sure.
Oh, man. Okay. So with that being said, thank you. I went deep off into it. I know, man. I try to be careful about that sometimes. But today, let's start with where y'all want to start at. Y'all want to start at home? Y'all want to start with the school? Y'all want to start with the community? Where y'all want to start with talking about men and some of the lessons you learn about masculinity?
Home is a good foundation.
Okay, let's start at home. All right. Who want to knock at it first? I'm gonna knock you.
I can jump out the tree since nobody wants to. You know what I'm saying?
Well, you gotta let him brother up.
Right. I kind of contemplated on that thought for a second. My foundational thoughts from home and masculinity. It was for me. It was kind of like one of those villages that raises a child. I had a present father. My father was there, and but he was not the type who didn't allow other male influences around me. Father, grandfather, uncles. Coaches, kind of give me that influence of home. And all of them kind of gave me like a home type influence. But one foundational piece was work. I didn't see too many lazy men around me. So that was a foundational principle that, as a young child, I was taught to work. You know what I'm saying? Like, that was something that I saw every man in my life, including my father, my grandfather, my uncles. All of them were workers. None of them were lazy men. And it didn't even also necessarily meant that they were the sole providers, because I also had women in my life who were workers and who provided and brought things to the table financially. But at the end of the day, the men were going to do the work, housework, outside, yard work. I remember my pops kind of tricking me into cutting grass. Like I said, I was cutting some grass today, but he made cutting grass seem like that was the coolest thing to do.
Right.
Hey man, when you get of age, this is what men do. They come outside and they take care of their yard. And so, as soon as I was of age to push that lawnmower, they tricked me into doing the yard work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because that's the role of the man to take care of his house like that. So that was a foundational piece about all the men that were around me, is that I seen them all be workers. And I can expound on that later.
Okay. All right.
But work.
Man, like I really wouldn't have. Like it's tough because it's like there was men in my life, right? But I don't really feel like I have like vivid memory of anybody like doing anything or particularly like really instilling anything really like super impactful into me, and that's weird. Like that's why I couldn't just be like, yeah, let me just take off on this one, because I really don't know. Like my parents were together until I was like 10. My father ain't teach me how to dribble a ball, how to fight, how to how to throw a ball, how to nothing. Like what I'm saying? Like I can't. None of these are things that I can say I remember when my father taught me about this. You know what I'm saying? Like and the way that my parents' relationship went, it was just so volatile, which it wasn't all the time, but of course those are the kind of moments that stick in your mind. It's like there's not a lot there. I had my uncles, but of course that's, when you're going and dealing with the other side of your family, outside of your day-to-day household. And like I know my oldest uncle always worked. What he did, couldn't tell you. Don't know. Fancy suits though. My other uncle always worked, ex-military. That would probably be like the best example I got. And like my two older brothers, I don't really have nothing that's like there that stand out to me that's like this was me being taught how to do X, Y, Z. And so like the things that I can think about are things that were like negative that I experienced, that then I would find myself having conversations with like my mother about. It's like, this is how you should handle this. You saw that happen like this and it should have went like this. And it took me to grow up and engage in my own personal experiences to realize that she was, of course, saying the right thing, because it's hard to take advice on how to be a man from a woman. But I can't go back in my mind and find those moments where the men in my life taught me those things. So that's tough for me.
So for me, I would go back to, from a home perspective, I would go back to my uncle, who wasn't directly in my house, but like anytime something happened at my grandma's house or my house, my uncle was coming over there. He would like do anything as far as if the fence was down, pick it back up. Something was wrong with the garage door, he would do it, and I would always like watch him. And then sometimes he'd be overdoing some stuff. I'd be out like playing. So a lot of the stuff that I learned was more like visual, instead of my uncle actually like teaching me something. And I remember this story where one time my uncle, it was cold this day. It was like winter. My uncle was like, yo, I'm about to come pick you up, and we're going to go shovel some snow and make some money. So I'm like, all right, cool. I was young at the time, 10, 11 years old. So I never forget, my uncle had me with the shovel, and he had the snow plow. And this whole time I'm shoveling the snow, I'm like, man, why has he got me out here doing this? Like, it's so cold. I kept going in the car. But as I got older, he was trying to teach me the principles of like, you don't have to sell drugs, or you don't even have to have a direct job to make money. My whole time is, I'm like, yo, I don't want to do this at all. This don't even make sense to me. But he was trying to show me something without directly like telling me, this is what I want you to do. He was also trying to show me how to, shovel snow and do stuff like that and just work with my hands, because my father wasn't in the house. He wasn't present. And I never forget this story, man. I laugh about it to this day. Man, I think he gave me like $10. And I remember, I'm like, man, you gave me $10. We was out in the cold snow. I had one of them, like, I had 10 boots on. Them ain't no worker boots. And I was shoveling no snow. But it wasn't about the money. Boots. It was more about the principle. He was trying to teach me something like, you're going to have a house one day. You're going to have to shovel the snow. You're going to have to do this. So a lot of the stuff I learned was from him, but it was more visual than actually, like, sitting me down and, like, teaching me something when I was younger, like, telling where I am now, a little bit older.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I just never felt like, I never felt like anything that was happening around me was like I wasn't looking at anything like that's manhood right there. Like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna do that just like that. Like
Yeah.
I just remember, like I said, that's just rough. It's weird. It's weird for sure.
So yeah. So obviously, a lot of the things we learn, it's implied versus it's, people come out and say, well, this is, man. Sometimes people will come out and say, this is what a man does, and sometimes they won't. But I'm gonna ask y'all this: do you feel like that there were women in your life who were instilling or encouraging masculine attitudes or behaviors?
I would think so. I would go. I would reference my mom because she would always be on me, like coming up, like taking the trash out, making sure the bathroom is clean, making sure my room is clean, like teaching me how to be more neat, teaching me how to, be a man the best way she could without being directly a man, obviously. But there was things in the house where she would try to show me how to really like step up, regardless if it was taking initiative of just washing the dishes, taking initiative of like, all right, you see the trash is high,
Right.
take the trash out and replace it with another bag. So it was like little things like that where people don't understand that like it's not really like, oh, just women should be doing this, but men can also get, do the dishes or little stuff like that. So I think it was times where she was trying to teach me how to just step up in a way, like the best way she could. So I would say my mom kind of taught me some principles like coming up, or even how to treat women, as a man. Because
There you go.
obviously she would tell me like, oh, you can't talk to your sister like that. You can't talk to women like that, And I think a lot of that I be learning now, like as I get older, like, man, you can't be cussing at women. Like, even though that's my sister, she's still a female at the end of the day. So I think my mom was like teaching me a lot of that stuff too, like when I was like coming up.
Yeah. Yeah, because I had, like I said, my present father, my mother definitely, she reinforced, the discipline that my father was my mother was the light hand, my father was the heavy hand. My father was the one who was very stern, and he was a ex-military, sergeant in the Air Force. So he was
You ain't got to say no more.
yeah, so it was a stern hand that came from him. My mother, as soft as she was, she knew that was going to be great training for me later on in life. It was going to be that discipline that I needed. But to say a woman who reinforced masculinity and kind of taught certain things, even though it came from a woman's perspective, I thought about my aunt Frances. I had an aunt, and this was my grandmother's sister, and she was a single mother of 5 boys. So she raised 5 men who all were successful and all became, great in their own ways. But one thing when I used to go around her, she was the one who taught me to defend myself. She was the one who, when we would go and play, and I would go over and kick it with my cousins over there. And, if we had some street beef with the little kids around there, she'd be the first one to say, well, did you defend yourself? Did they put their hands on you? If they put their hands on you, you got to take them out. You know what I'm saying? Never was it coming from a bully perspective, but it was more so from a defend yourself. If somebody bullies you or puts their hands on you, you have to defend yourself. And she was stern in that. And I felt like, it instilled a lot in me as a man as far as the protecting myself and protecting my family. I remember getting that from my Aunt Frances for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely Dukes for sure. She, we here might as well give her a reason to kill me after the show, but I definitely, in that respect of like just like defending yourself, defending your family. My aunt was always like 100 pounds soaking wet, and like got into it with some people in the neighborhood. I was super little. I feel like it was just me and my middle brother, like my baby brother wasn't even born yet, and never forget it, bro. Jumping in the car and her just going to her sister aid, and bro, we pulled up, and it was like these chicks had jumped my aunt. And then, bro, like this was our house, and then like directly across, like 3 doors down, was where them chicks stayed, and they was just on their porch chilling. My mom pull up in the grass, like, what's up? Jump out the car, go up on the porch, and just start beating everybody up on the porch. And I'm like, yo, she by herself. Like, it was like action movie, bro. Like,
No fear.
And she like, listen, like, that ain't how we do things, but when you get pushed, then it comes to shove. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it's like, wow, bro, like, that's crazy. Like I said, that's a visual I'll never forget, just seeing my mom just socking 3 people out at once. It's like, you only got 2 hands, but you beating up 6. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But
Yourself.
it is definitely that.
Yeah, you know.
But like my mother, you know, and then also, like, of course, every time what I realized is I found that a lot of times catching them lessons or like conversations from like a woman in the family was a lot of times motivated by by a man doing the wrong thing. You know what I mean? Like, you experienced this, you saw this happen. This is, like I said, this is how that should have went, or this is how you talk to a woman. This is how you don't say these things, and this is why. You know, you usually catch that which is the really, you know, one of the best ways to do it. I mean, I would ask the therapist, but you know what I'm saying? It's like you engage with something right there immediately when the action takes place, because you don't want to wait 3-4 hours on the line or a week down the line and say, hey, this is how you were supposed to take care of that. No, it's you tackle that right then. Same if you training a dog. It's like, you piss on my kitchen floor, we're going to bring you right to it right now. No. You know what I'm saying? Like, you got to reinforce those moments immediately, and I feel like I always got that, but that always came from the women around.
You know what? I mean, I like to think, you know, the women in my life were always pushing me towards work and, you know, just being the best version of myself. So I don't necessarily know if that's like, you know, a man thing, but that drive, that push, like, you got to be good. You got to put your best foot forward. My mom would tell us that she didn't care about how we felt about our teachers, but because they got theirs, we better go to school and we better get ours.
Facts.
Like,
Facts, though.
But when I speaking to my auntie, hey auntie,
Hey, auntie.
auntie said that's not how grandma taught it, because grandma was a domestic worker, and she told them, if y'all don't do good in school, if y'all don't get y'all grades up, dog was gonna be treated better than you. And when I heard that, I was like, wow, she said that. But I was like, what? She said, remember, she was a domestic worker. And so she would go into these people's houses, and they would have these rooms where dogs had laid out rooms, and dogs were living real lavish, comfortable lives. And then at the time, they living in a 350-foot square house, and they all packed into this one little place. So grandma going to work every day. I mean, yeah, I guess that's my grandma. So yeah, she was going to work every day, and she was seeing this experience, and she was encouraging them, like, okay, y'all better go to school, y'all better take care of y'all business and everything. And you know, she raised, you know, my mom, her sister, her brothers, and for the most part, you know, they turned out fine. But so that work piece, I think that piece about and maybe from a man more so, or from men in my life, that role of how a man is supposed to treat a woman, respect, dignity, supposed to be there, be the protector, all those kind of things. You know, you was hearing that, in that idea of being the head of the household, kind of that whole thing. And now I got to say, the women in my life also a lot of times encourage that same mentality. Like, you know, you're supposed to be a man, you got to be the head of your household, you got to do these things. And so, you know, growing up with that, it was very much a part of my life also, being conscious of it. And I oftentimes think women take on the paternalistic ideas, so the ideas about how a man should be, so they can actually, in many ways, teach boys many things about being a man, because they've been brought up in an environment where they've been taught to see things or act from a paternalistic perspective. Does that make sense? Yeah. Versus... And so they operate in that space and may not even realize they're doing it. But
I think it's easier for them to do that when there's that male example that they even grew up around.
Right, exactly.
The ones there's a stark difference between the ones I feel like who grew up in an environment where their father was there to teach a boy how to be a man, rather than the ones who their father wasn't even there, and then they're kind of coming from a toxic perspective on, well, that my male, the father in my life wasn't there, so maybe even sometimes they're putting unnecessary pressure on that boy to be the male that their father wasn't.
Exactly. So
You know,
That's good.
But I do think that there's something to that, because like on one hand, right, you may have like I can think vividly, right, though, to some of the things that like some of my uncles or even my father have said to me, but wasn't none of that shit like valuable lessons. It's like, so this how you gonna deal with the women. Like, I don't like them conversations. Them like, hey, so you see how I got that number? See, you gonna get a number just like that one. Like, that's not the valuable actual lessons. But to catch them conversations from the women, like, if you think on some of those conversations, some of those lessons, they are trying to raise you to be the type of man that they would want to have.
right?
And so there's something positive to be said for that, because there's definitely two elements to being a man. There's the side of being a man on your own, and there's a side of being a man with a woman or with your partner. You know what I'm saying? You know, it ain't June no more, but still, you know, whoever you gonna be with, there's two sides to being a man, and you can learn from both sexes, you know what I'm saying, in that respect. Lessons in being a man, what type of man you need to be, or what type of actions you need to take to be able to be, like I said, by yourself and with somebody, because it's definitely two different things.
Yeah, and I think it's important to emphasize what you're saying, that there's not necessarily one way, like at home, there's not one way per se to be masculine or to be a man. You know, sometimes I think we focus on certain qualities, but you know, like for example, being athletic, you know, being powerful and strong, being good with the women, being charismatic, those things we focus on. But being I say protector, yeah, but there's other qualities like that we might not necessarily you know, cultivate or encourage so much, like men being in touch with their feelings, being somewhat artistic in different ways, like not, you know, we might not encourage that as much. Being intellectual, like we don't really put a lot of emphasis on that, and so those sometimes don't look like masculine behaviors. If a man is taught never to express his feelings, like a lot of us may have grown up in homes where we was never taught to express our feelings. And we think that's not masculine if I say how I feel. And women may have been taught that too. So when a man comes out and say, baby, I feel like this, like they already like, like they don't know how to handle that. Too much. They don't know how to handle that because they never been taught that a man should express his feelings.
Right. Yeah, I can say I benefited from like having a multitude of examples of strong men in different capacities. So like you said, expressing your feelings. My father also is an artist. He's a singer. So, you know, most artists are openly emotional, right? They can show their emotions. So I seen my father cry, you know, growing up. And so to me, I'm a crier. You know what I'm saying? I'll cry.
Go
if
ahead
something
and
touches
cry.
my emotions. But I have, you know, certain friends who grew up in an environment where, you know, seeing a man cry was foreign. So to this day, I got friends who I've never seen cry because they just felt like that wasn't masculine. But I seen my father cry, and I know he's a masculine man. I know he's a strong individual, and I never looked at crying as a sign of weakness.
Right. And so let me ask you this, and we can think about this not just in a home, but also like in the school or the community. Do you feel that you or in the church, so school, church, community, whatever religious affiliation you may have grew up in, do you, if you did, and if not, that's okay. Do you feel like when we talk about things like leadership, do you feel like that was a overly masculine, emphasized thing to be a leader? Like,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I would say so. I grew up in a Baptist church,
Same.
and in my Baptist church, I never saw a woman walk across the pulpit. Like that was like a big thing. Like no woman could walk across the pulpit at all. No woman could be the preacher or the main speaker of the church. If any woman had something to say, she would have to go to the side podium and speak and maybe do morning announcements or something like that. But when it came time for teaching or preaching or reading of the scripture, it was always done by a male. So growing up, I definitely had the perspective that was in a spiritual realm. That was the only place where men were supposed to be in that role. And I've heard debate over certain scriptures from a Christian perspective that speaks about where men were telling the women to be silent in the church, in the synagogue or whatnot. But when you do the historical research on that, is because in that time frame, they were in a setting where the women were placed in the back of the church and the men were all in the front of the church, and they were telling the women to be quiet so that the men could get the information and then go home and tell it to their family. But it took years for me to get out of that mentality and understand that, because then, I ended up going and attending and becoming a member of a church where the pastor of my church was a woman. And so when I first visited that church, it was almost kind of like shocking to see this woman be the preacher for the day. I'm like, oh, she's speaking, where's the man? You know what I'm saying? Like, where's the pastor? Yeah. And she is the pastor. And when I heard her preach, and it resonated in my spirit that, okay, no, the message that she's speaking to me is real. It killed down a lot of those narratives that I grew up in, thinking that men were only supposed to be in that role of preaching.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I can remember because I grew up in a Baptist church as well. I can remember like deacons or people that sat in the front row was all male. Like I remember when I even was a junior deacon, like it was all males that was in the front. And, our pastor was a male. I actually, not until I got older, seen, like you saying, like seen women even preach the word. Even when we had guest speakers back in the day, they were male. And I don't, like I said, I don't remember no women like sitting in the front. So for me, growing up, piggybacking off of what you said, the men were the leaders in the church. The men were the leaders that was, opening up the church for Bible study, closing the church for Bible study, making the decisions on whatever we were doing inside the church at the time was all male. I think a lot of the females were like choir directors at that time. And then after that, like you said, they would sit down and the males would come up. So, and actually the church I go to now, our lead pastor is a female. So I think as you get older, you start to learn from a church perspective, the word is a word. And if you know the word, you can preach it and you can give it. But yeah, it's definitely back then it was all males in the church. And then even like from a community base, like back then when we was having like little league football, little league basketball, it was all males that was coaches and directors and running everything. We didn't have female coaches. Back then it was all males. We didn't even have, come to think about it, I don't even think there really was like, different leagues for females back then at that time when I was coming up. We played at the rec. I mean, the rec league was off the chain, but there was no female rec league back then. It was all males that was leading the whole way. So even from a community base, I think, a lot of coaches I could attest to that, taught me how to be a male better, especially from a sports perspective, like learning how to lose. When you lose a game, don't cry, keep your head held high and shake hands. Man, when I got in the car, I was crying, man. But you wasn't quote unquote allowed to cry in front of everybody because that showed weakness, back then. So no, definitely, it was like that for me.
Yeah.
Can I just piggyback back off of the church piece one more time?
Go ahead.
Because here was the ironic thing about the fact that the males were the leaders, right? The males were the leaders, in the church, but predominantly the congregation were females. The men, if you were a male in leadership, that was predominantly those roles. But the general pop of the congregation was all females. And what I noticed about that, even my grandmother, she was a Sunday school teacher. My grandfather would be around the corner from the church, hanging on the corner with his homeboys, you know what I'm saying? Kind of knocking the church. And not from a spiritual perspective, but it was more so, I'm not about to be following behind that man like that.
Right.
The masculine role in him, and I think a lot of men in a certain time frame was their ego said, I can't fall under the submission of this man, because that's the main role of a lot of pastors in the church is I'm over this congregation. And so it takes a level of humility for a male to come in that setting and say, I'm submitting myself to this man as my spiritual leader, as my pastor. And so it's just funny to me across the board how a lot of times when you have that male figure at the head of the church, a lot of times it's hard for men to get under that, because it's like, I got to submit myself to this other man when I felt like he's just a man like me. Why should I be under him?
So let me ask you a question with that. Do you think some of the issues that men have with the church per se is more due to the fact that men tend to look for answers in more concrete ways? And so we try to focus on logic, where women may actually look at things and hope, and might and faith might influence their actions and decision makings, so they can attune themselves to an idea that might be presented in a church environment more than men. It's like, okay, yeah, they might hear, the Lord can work it out, but you know what? I got to make them ends. So yeah, that's what's gonna work it out, right? And that thinking process keeps men sometimes from being able to access that spiritual avenue as a way to manage their reality, and also in conjunction to what you're saying.
Right. Well, yeah. A lot of times they say men are more logical and women are a little bit more emotional.
Yeah.
And so that emotional aspect probably plays on that faith-based teaching, like just have the faith that it's going to happen. Where, no, man, one and one needs to equal two. I need to see how this is going to work so that I don't look like, a fool in the end if I'm saying I just got faith in that this is going to happen and then it don't happen. You know what I'm saying? Where a woman kind of more so will allow her emotions to say, well, I'm going to believe in it and hope that it happens and, keep my faith there. Not
to say they won't plan and organize.
Exactly.
But they got that. They might have a little more balance with that. But anyway.
For sure. Which is not a bad thing.
Not a bad thing
at all.
But yeah, but you know what? With you saying that, I have to say this. Is just food for thought, right? Logic may rule your thinking, but feelings will rule your destiny. Logic may rule your thinking, but feelings will rule your destiny. Let me ask y'all with that. Ask y'all about the idea of, like, you're thinking about what we learned from like church and leadership, and what about the idea? How do you think we internalize the idea of guilt and shame from our spiritual experiences?
Guilt and shame.
Now, you want me? If y'all think about, you want me to start off? So I was kind of thinking, like, I always like to let y'all go first. I was kind of thinking when I thought about this was like, we get our moral sense oftentimes from home and from church from home, and we begin to judge ourselves against those behaviors, so that we are taught a right and wrong. And so when we come up to those behaviors, we feel like the good boy or the good man. Yeah, see, I'm a good man because I did X, Y, and Z. But when we can't do those things, then, or we fall short, then we experience more guilt and more shame because we didn't come up. And for many men, this becomes a barrier to this our personal and spiritual and natural growth because we can't even admit what we've done wrong because we want to be that leader, we want to be that provider, and we want to appear as we doing things the right way. So when we do mess up, the idea of the guilt, the idea of the shame that might come with it takes us to a dark place where we can't really be ourselves.
Right. Yeah, from a spiritual perspective, I can relate to that because I can just remember growing up, even thinking about my childhood pastor, man. Like, I used to look at this guy like Jesus Christ, my pastor, perfect individuals. I couldn't even fathom seeing him do something wrong.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I thought this man was, because all I really knew of him, I didn't know him really on a personal level. All I knew of him was from what I seen Sunday after Sunday, him preaching and teaching. And so the things that he preached and taught about were about, living right, doing the right thing, being, almost this, as they say, a saint, right? Being a saint. And so never really did he really expose his shortcomings or where he was just a real individual who makes mistakes just like everybody else. Mm-hmm. And so because of that, I think once I got older and I started understanding, man, like, no, he's a human being. He makes mistakes too. Certain flaws get exposed. It was like, oh, wow, he's not a perfect individual. So growing up, times where I knew that I was imperfect and things that I knew that I was messing up, you know what I'm saying? It definitely made me feel like, oh, man, I am a foul cat, man. I am about to be on a one-way ticket to hell. You know what I'm saying? From the one or two mistakes or 10 or 20 mistakes that I did make, you know what I'm saying? It made me feel like less than a person, very much so less than the guy who I was seeing preaching at the pulpit. And so, yeah, to answer your statement or to validate what you said, I definitely think it plays on people's psyche sometimes when you look at it from a perspective of, man, if I'm not this perfect individual, I'm falling from grace. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Where it's like all men have fallen short of the glory.
Right.
Easy. Bro, I still ain't got my feet together. You know what I'm saying? It's like, bro, and it don't come easy neither, bro. So I get it. Yeah, make all the sense in the world to me.
Yeah. You want to say something?
No, I think he hit it right.
Yeah,
hit it right on the head. Just about having that leader just saying that he like, or thinking that he's like flawless, and then like if you do one thing wrong, and I feel like a lot of times too, from church, from a home perspective, I know back in the day, like my mom was like, "Oh, you do something wrong, you going to hell." Not literally, but like that's what a lot of the people within the church are older people in the church, like the elders, will always be like, "Boy, you do wrong, you know where that's gonna lead you. You know that God don't like ugly, God don't like this, God don't like that." So I think as a kid, leaders in the church or like the older people in the church, outside of just the pastor, put that as the stigma around the church. Like you as a kid couldn't do no wrong, or you was done. You was like you said, one-way ticket. So, and as you get older, you start to understand like no man is perfect on this earth, and we all gonna fall short, and we all gonna have our shortcomings or our sins. But at the end of the day, as long as we trying to fight the good fight, asking God for forgiveness when we know that we're wrong, and try to do better each and every day, then that's just enough, because that's all our pastors was doing back then. But us as kids, we was just always taught that, the deacons was always in the front row, suits on, first Sunday was communion, black suits, everybody, they all was lined up in the front. Yes, you would just thought that was just the perfect image. I want to be that. Yeah. And if I am doing wrong things, or if I'm doing bad in school, I can't be that. I won't make it to heaven. I won't get up there to stand on the first Sunday when it's communion. And stuff like that. So that's definitely the stigma around for sure.
You know, and another piece to that, so we talking about from the moral perspective, but also just the idea of being a producer or provider. You know, when we feel like we can't do that, that can lead to a lot of feelings of shame and doubt. You know, shame, of course, shame, doubt, guilt, all of those emotions. And, you know, because we are taught, you know, if you be fruitful, you go out there, do good, you know, things will work out for you. You'll be a provider, and then you find yourself not being able to provide. Like, you know, I'm trying to do good, I'm trying to do right, but I can't provide. What's going on? And you're looking at your family, you're looking at yourself, you're angry, and you're blowing up on people. Nobody don't know why, but it's all rooted in that feeling of that guilt, that shame, that disappointment, that doubt, and because you don't see yourself being able to be that person that you want to be, but it's normal sometimes for us not to be able to be providers.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think
Sometimes.
it as you evolve through life and get older and have life experiences, you realize like what they say, everything works together for the good, right? Like, so you got to go through those variations of ups and downs to appreciate when you up, to appreciate when you can provide. Like, you know, for me, I've had moments where, you know, it was check to check, beyond check to check. We looking for food stamps, and you know, we looking for any type of way to, you know, pay the rent and make sure we got some food on the table. You know what I'm saying? Me and my wife both have to, you know, go through those channels. But then we had plenty of seasons where we were up, you know, had plenty of seasons where it's like, hey, babe, if you don't want to work for a few months, you ain't even got to work. You know what I'm saying? Like, the money's good. But, you know, I think it took those downtimes, and in those downtimes, it came with so much doubt and so much, like, looking at myself and looking at the examples of the men who came before me, like, man, I'm not living up to that. Like, what's wrong with me? What did I do wrong? But then after I got older and I see where those times taught me, you know, it taught me to appreciate the season when it got better. You know, now I can look back at it and appreciate that time frame. It taught me patience. It taught me, you know, fortitude and how to keep on moving past that time frame. So it's like, I think if you get stuck in the immediate situation that you in and just think that this is doom and gloom and this is where my destiny is headed, instead of realizing it's just a season and then it's just something that I had to go through for a reason, to learn some sort of lesson or to appreciate it when the times are good. You know what I mean? Like, it evolves through that. And I think it just takes a little life living to get to that type of mentality.
Right. It's good. So on that, man, that's good, fellas. We have to accept ourselves and work through things, and we need to be able to talk to people about, you know, those feelings of doubt or shame and guilt when we not able to either morally come up or we feel like we don't produce in the way we think we should produce. You know, we have to be able to talk to somebody and share, and you know, if we got people on our team that's willing to work with us, we're gonna get things done anyway, because it's a mistake when we think that we have to do it all by ourselves in the first place. It's a mistake. We got to have some help, you know. So that being said, let's talk a little bit about maybe some of the things you might have learned in the community about being a man. What do you think? Got any interesting stories about that?
Say community, are we
Like,
talking?
so in the hood and you're around your friends, or maybe y'all was out playing sports or anything. I could say, you know, one of the things I grabbed, which was when playing sports, which was, you know, if you got out there, you playing football or whatever, because I used to play a lot of football when I was growing up. If you get hurt or whatever, take a lick, you know, you just get up. You don't get up, you don't complain, you don't really argue about it. You just take it, get up and keep moving and everything. And that was I think on some level that's a good thing, but I think if it's done too much, it can become negative, because obviously sometimes if you're hurt and you're in pain, you need to tell somebody, you need to talk to somebody. A lot of us don't go to the doctor because we hurting and stuff. We like, oh man, I'm all right, man. So we didn't even go get the checkup. See, that's when it becomes negative. But finding a balance between those two, I think is important.
Yeah, I think definitely when you talked about, man, I felt like I was one of them old school, you know, we probably all was amongst this group, man, of, you know, kids who was outside, man. I wasn't an indoor type of kid like that unless weather was bad or, you know, it was wintertime in Cleveland, you know, so, but, you know, my community of cats that I grew up with, man, we was outside and we was definitely competitive, man. So that competitiveness, I think, translated to teaching me about manhood because it's a competitive world. And so it was like always a competition of some sort, whether it's on basketball, whether it's running, whether it's football, baseball. We played all the sports, man, and it was always a constant competition on who was the best, who was the most athletic, who was the strongest, who was the fastest. You know, like that was a constant conversation, you know, growing up in my neighborhood on like the competition of who was the best at something, whatever it was. And so I think that was something that stuck with me, you know, growing up, like just the competition of trying to be the best version of myself that I could be. It also taught me that I'm not going to be the best at everything. You know what I mean? I had to kind of accept when I couldn't be the best at something.
So you didn't get picked. You didn't take your ball.
Man, I felt like being like that sometimes. You know what I'm saying? I usually got picked though. I was a decent athlete, man. But I felt for the cats who didn't. Though,
Yeah,
know?
Yeah, and then you can do the same them though. We can do we shoot around a little extra after, bruh. You know what I'm saying? You just sit there and sweat in the meantime. But yeah, no, I think like I don't really feel like a lot of those. I feel like a lot of these experiences for me personally came as I got older. You know, like when I really realized like what my stepfather was doing. You know what I mean? Like my stepfather doesn't have any biological children. He just had us. So you know, he went from not having kids at all to all of a sudden you got three who rebelling. You know what I'm saying? Who pushing back against you in every way because like you the outsider coming into, and it's like I don't know that most men, you know, would step into that situation and stand 10 toes in it. Like this is what it's gonna be. You know what I mean?
Respect.
So there's that, right? Like I said, when I was fighting, my trainer, same thing. It was like, listen, like you representing me, you representing this gym, you representing your teammates, these cats that you work with in here, everybody that's a part of this organization when you go out in the streets, and this is how you're supposed to uphold yourself. And that was a critical thing for us. And the threat, like I said, loomed of being excommunicado if you go outside of what we do in these principles, because these are things that we should be standing on. You know, how to carry yourself, how to conduct yourself, to not go out here and be like that dick. Like I know I can fight. I'm not about to go out here and just sock everybody who look at me funny because I know what I can do. It's that restraint. That's a thing that I learned. Like it's the restraint. You don't have to impose your power on people. You know what I'm saying? That's a thing.
Isn't that? I think that's a good point you make right there, because I think when you are comfortable in your own skin and you feel secure, you feel less of a need to demonstrate power to others.
Right.
You know, sometimes, but sometimes that might seem like that's anti-masculine. But really, I think strength comes with, when we really understand strength, it says we use restraint versus acting out on it.
Yeah.
Because if you acting out on it all the time, there's probably this insecurity or fear that you need to act out. Like I used to go down this street when I would go to school when I was in 7th, 8th grade, and every day I would walk by there, boom, with this little chihuahua, I'll be like, at me. I walk by this one fence, it'd be this Great Dane, tall as me. I'm like 8th grade, tall as me, right? Sit there, just quiet as I don't know what. But that little chihuahua just always barking at me. So one day I stepped towards the chihuahua, and the chihuahua like jumps back and just cry. And like some of us, no matter how big or small we are, we might live with that sense of like fear, and and we can't be like person that I can be cool in the situation, not quick to jump, because I understand like you know, I know what I'm capable of, but I don't have to always assert power and control over it. And like I like this, I think I said this before, that when we get to a place, there's sometimes we have to exert power, but when we get to the place where we always doing that, then we probably gonna lose power anyway.
Yeah.
I could say from a community base over what you asked. I remember in high school, man, we used to play at this park, Campedo Park, and we used to play basketball up there, man. And them games, I mean, it was some of the best games. I mean, we would be there all day, and it was so competitive, and you didn't want to lose. And if you ever lose, everybody blaming you didn't do this, you didn't do that, and we'd be like, man, no, we got to get back on the court. Ain't no way we got, because if whoever had the best record that day, you heard about it all that next night. Don't let it rain the next day. So you heard about it all the next day. So I think at that time in high school, being at the park, playing like all summer, it taught me how to be tough. It taught me how to just take my L's. Because there was sometimes we'd go 8-0 at the park. And there was sometimes we leave the park, we like, man, we can't get a win. I can't get a basket. And I think, like, I remember my freshman year, I used to be, I'm talking about angry. I used to throw a temper tantrum when we used to lose. But as I got older, I just learned, like, you know what? Like, man, today just ain't our day. Like, we just didn't do, because a couple days ago, we beat everybody. We was 8-0 at the park. Right. You know, so today just ain't our day. So I think from a community, just playing basketball with my friends coming up in high school, like, over time, it just taught me that being masculine and being a man is also learning how to just be like, this is not my day. Today just wasn't our day. We just couldn't buy a bucket. I couldn't do nothing. I'm turning the ball over. It ain't my day. It's just not the day to this day. It's not our day. And you realize that. So I think from a community base, that's how we was, because we was outside. I wasn't even allowed to be in the house. Like, you outside from after you eat breakfast, you come in for lunch and go back out till the street lights come back on. Like, you had to be outside. So we used to always do that. I never played football, though. Because I was just always a smaller guy. I never really played, like, outside football. But from the basketball perspective, on that court, playing at Campedo Park, like, it made you tough, though, because you had to learn.
Yeah. I mean, some good talk, guys. Man, let me ask y'all a question. In closing this part of our discussion, what do you think being masculine truly is? What does it really mean when you think about it? Or maybe ask the question, what are some things you've gotten out of this discussion that might be helpful in helping somebody else that might be struggling with that idea?
Like, simplifying things down would be like not only having strength, but also having restraint, also having integrity, being somebody who can protect and provide, defend yourself, defend others. And that, and you know what, even beyond the, yourself and your family, others weaker than you. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Others that, you know what I'm saying, then seeing somebody get picked on, messed with, somebody that can't do for themselves, to be able to step into that, those types of things, those types of just general principles, I feel like are things that encompass the different areas of masculinity. Of course, there's, even more to it than that, but, just to, like I said, try to simplify.
What would you say?
I would say, and it's something I don't feel like we expound on a whole lot, but a masculine individual, I feel like, is also somebody who is a seeker of knowledge, because I think wisdom and being able to teach, is a masculine trait as well. I feel like, and that can encompass a lot of things, either if it's because, like we said, a lot of times masculine or males are put in the role of leadership. And so to be a great leader, a coach, a pastor, or husband, father, you need to have some knowledge, and so I think wisdom, those who seek wisdom, and, the work ethic, being able to be a worker, being able to be a provider, somebody who actually brings something to the table on a daily basis, is a masculine trait. I don't think, and from my personal perspective, it's a masculine trait to be lazy individual, to be somebody who's looking for somebody to carry them along. I think a masculine trait is going to step up and be able to provide and bring others along with them. So it's my perspective.
Yeah, I think my perspective on masculinity is just really, saying, doing what you say you're gonna do, stepping up, like you said, being a provider, being a leader, but also understanding when to show restraint, understanding where it's like, I don't really need to be in the spotlight right now, but I can still be masculine within just myself. I can say how you were saying about, the whole fighting thing, like, I know for a fact I could beat this dude down right now. But me walking away, understanding that I'm more masculine than just walking away, like it just not that I don't need to do that. Right. I don't need to prove myself to him or anybody else because I know who I am. Yeah. So I think just being for sure and knowing who you are within yourself is masculine and always trying to, prove yourself to everybody in the room. No, so I think that's one of the big traits. So I took away from that piece of what you were saying about that. Sure.
Yeah, and it's like I didn't directly say it, but yeah, like that. Yeah, that knowledge of self, that confidence. Yeah, that's definitely a thing.
Yeah, and I want to just add that number one, I think when we being masculine, it's not just one thing. I think it's important as men that we begin to and continue to develop our emotional awareness. It doesn't make us weak if we are aware of our emotions. It doesn't make us inadequate or less masculine if we talk about our feelings. We can be producers, we can be providers, but it's okay to ask for help. We don't have to. We might feel some guilt or shame, and those emotions might be normal to feel, but you have people in your life who help you, wife, mother, father, people who love you that you can go to and you can talk to them about things that might be going on in your life, because that might be the difference between imploding or exploding or becoming very angry or becoming very depressed or becoming suicidal or becoming violent. So for many of us, so we have to continue to develop that emotional flexibility so that we can see ourselves in different ways and not just see like you just got to be this way all the time, like hard. Because as we said, when you hard like a brick, when you get thrown, you break easy. So thank you. If you like this discussion, please like us, add your comments in the drop-down box, and anything else, folks?
Facial hair is also masculine. We out here. Keep your chin on 10.
Beard gang.
Beard gang. All right. You can be beard gang, goatee mob. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? However you want to look.
Massacre.
Yeah, you feel me? Like something though. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Don't be a smooth Susie, because automatically you're masculine points.
Smooth Susie?
Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
If that's how you want to be, like it's okay.
Yeah.
All right.